So about a week ago, Barack Obama was giving a town hall meeting, and they were talking about. He was asking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement.
Sorry,
and he was
giving a town hall meeting. I thought a town hall meeting was all about, interaction and stuff.
Well,
so it does
he
seem to
was
be a
at some
oxymoron.
sort of a
Sorry.
venue, I think, on MSNBC with Chris Matthews.
Go ahead. Just wanted to pick at you.
Anyway,
Sorry about that.
he was criticizing critics of the TPP on the left. One of them, of course, is Elizabeth Warren, the progressive populist senator from Massachusetts. And his quote was, I love Elizabeth Rouse on a whole host of issues, but she's wrong on this.
That's right.
When you hear folks make a lot of suggestions about how bad this trade deal is, when you dig into the facts, they're wrong. And he went on to talk about that people's concerns about the trade deal are unfounded, and there's protections for human rights, workers' rights, environmental, and so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, he just basically said that also the criticism about the negotiations being classified is unfair, because in time the document will come out once the negotiations are completed, and so on. And he's obviously been a big advocate of the TPP, along with many members of the business community, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the copyright lobby, the pharmaceutical lobby, Republicans in Congress primarily. But there's also been critics on both the left and the right of TPP, both pro-union progressives, groups like the AFL-CIO, and then also even like Tea Party groups, primarily probably because they don't like Obama a lot, but either way. We've seen critics on the right, like Mike Huckabee. We've seen critics on the left, like I said, like the AFL-CIO, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Warren, and others. And, I think we've talked about this before on the show. My position is simply that free trade agreements have not worked like we wanted them to, be it NAFTA, WTO, or any other agreements we've talked about. And not only will it negatively impact our domestic economy and our jobs here, it's also going to impact other countries negatively. You've seen protests against TPP by Japanese farmers, by people in Australia, and all these other nations that would be affected. So it's not even just an American issue, or me just being an isolationist or a nativist and saying, oh, let's just keep our jobs here and keep everybody out. Because people in other countries don't want to see that. This is just a sellout to the corporations, to the big interests, and the pharmaceutical industry, the copyright lobby.
But is this not just something inevitable in a global economy?
It is inevitable, but that doesn't mean you support it. You don't go jumping in just because it's going to pass. And the thing is too, it's shameful. I wrote an article today that members of Congress, at least some of them on certain committees, have the right or the opportunity to read the text legislation for the TPP. And a lot of them are not even choosing to read it. They're not even voluntarily choosing to access the document that they have access to as a member of Congress. So when Congress is not doing its job, what can you do? With people we have elected, by and large, are abandoning their posts to begin with, and you see too many people either kowtowing to corporate interests or just saying, oh, I trust the president, oh, I trust my party, I'm just going to let him have his fast track and let him do what he wants because I trust him. That's not a way you legislate.
All right, so here's the deal about free trade. Free trade brings down trade barriers in a way that brings other countries that are typically very poor, a lot of these countries are very poor, some of them are well off, into the global economy so that everybody can trade together. And the United States doing this required some sacrifices. And we have studies on this. There's a study, for instance, by Autor, Dorn, and Hansen that came out in recent years, where they were able to show pretty well that about 1 out of every 4 manufacturing jobs that we lost during the 1990s and during the 2000s up to 2007 were lost because of free trade, whereas 75% were lost because of automation and technology and everything else.
Only 1 in 4 happened because these
are labor economists. Some people may criticize these specific 3 as being kind of to the left, but I thought that their study was still well done. So yes, 1 in 4. Other people would probably tell you less, but I'm going to go ahead and go with their study.
Still, that's pretty significant.
But here's the thing: those 1 in 4
Right.
jobs were lost, and other jobs were created. And if you look at these new jobs that have been created as a result, these are much better jobs that are in creative industries, that are in software, that are in movies, that are in finance, that are in much higher paying jobs than the jobs that
are
are
not getting the job.
That's right. This is
person who
the
lost the
thing.
job is not getting that job.
I believe, I'll admit to you, I believe your statistic about the 1 in 4. I don't dispute that. I don't think it's worse. I don't think it's like been a total economic catastrophe. But this is the problem. Number one, it negatively impacted certain areas of the country that were manufacturing oriented, primarily the Rust Belt. And that's been a problem because those economies have been ruined. Places like Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, these places that used to produce things are not doing it
But
anymore.
you do see that these places have been primarily hit by the fact that manufacturing has been so automated. That's been the main issue.
Union jobs, and this is the other thing that it's done.
Well, you said a quarter of it.
You talk about
only
these,
1/4.
You talk about these jobs being created, and that's fine. But the jobs being created are for people with high skills, with degrees, and they're being created in places like Silicon Valley and Atlanta and places like that, which is that's great for people that live there. But for people that don't have that formal, traditional college education or that technical study, they cannot find work. And if they can find work, it's not the same good job they have.
Okay,
it's no longer the case in America. You can go to work for Ford Automotive, for example, and learn a manual labor skill and have a middle-class lifestyle, put your kids through college, have health insurance, be able to take a vacation, be able to have own a home. We've destroyed that for what? So that the international corporations can increase their profits even further by outsourcing labor? Is that worth it to you?
All right. Let me, first off, I'm going to say my general view of these trade things. It's basically corporations and the rich deciding amongst themselves and the governments that they own how they're going to coordinate across the world. And workers have no say. Unions have no say in this. What I'll say in the larger picture, unions need to... And I guess union movements have been saying this for a while, but they need some kind of global organization, some kind of global way to organize the working class in countries the same way that capital is so mobile, that, if one country is not too amenable to, the profit margin to some company, they'll go to another country. And then they'll pit them against each other. And that's the thing. The problem is they'll pit them against each other.
Here's the point that I was going to make is that right now, over the last 30-odd years, starting in the 1980s, we've had an economy that is structured in a way that benefits the rich. And I don't think the people that have put this system in place meant to do that, but that is what is happening. It is primarily, we have an overall economic system.
The rich.
Meant well.
All right,
fine. But the point, regardless of what the intentions were, we have a system right now that's going for the rich. That's where most of the new money is going. And I think a lot of people are blaming that on free trade because they see that there have been a few jobs that were lost. There have been new jobs that were created because of free trade. But people are blaming, especially when they see that, well, for instance, when Steen goes on and on about the decline of manufacturing and the decline of manufacturing cities like Detroit or Baltimore, for instance, he's blaming free trade largely for these things, even though 75% of it, according to this study, was caused by automation.
Okay,
and even
though
we have all these
downplaying
new,
1/4. 1/4 is still a
created
significant factor. Joey, hold on, Joey. The Red Bull can. 1/4 is still a significant number. I got two more things to say about the TPP, and then I'm gonna shut up because I want to hear what you have to say to her.
All right, sure.
All right, so what I just said, and another problem. So here's one thing Obama said the other day. What was it? When you hear folks make a lot of suggestions about how bad this trade deal is, when you dig into the facts, they are wrong. I mean, this is just some disingenuous bullshit because this is a secret trade deal. This is part of the problem, that it's secret, that we can't dig into the facts. We won't know until it's agreed on. And that's my problem. That's one of my 2 points that I'm going to bring up right here. The other one is, so what do they call it? Investor-state dispute settlements.
Uh-huh.
Did
you want to go into
Fuck
it?
that, yeah. Defend it. I mean, you know what those are, right?
Those are
where companies basically like, this violates
those are
your
the things
law
that
violates
tobacco
our trade
companies are
deal.
using?
So you labeling where your meat comes from, or you labeling GMOs,
Yeah, exactly.
or you some kind of regulation that your government creates. A company, a foreign corporation can come in.
When people
and
talk
sue
about when people talk about the quote unquote globalist conspiracy and that kind of thing, in this case they're actually sort of right because that's what they're saying. Like with WTO and other agreements, if you're part of these organizations, these agreements, you cannot pass certain laws that are structured a certain way. It's the same with the UN Convention Against Drugs. It's actually not legal for a UN signee to that protocol to legalize drugs. They can do what Portugal did, and they can create some loopholes in the law. But they cannot. If a country decides voluntarily, even if it's a tiny little country in the middle of nowhere, Monaco or whatever it may be, decides they want to legalize drugs, they cannot do that under the UN treaty.
Brian's got the conch.
So, I just want to push back a little bit against Scott and Steen, who seem to be the big TPP opponents, and I want to suggest that China is attempting to exert a fair amount of global influence, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in Africa, they're trying to take all the world's resources and wealth and kind of suck it into the Chinese economy,
Just like
whereas
America tried.
this is kind of going against the idea of
That's our
America
plan.
sucking in the global resources, sucking it into America. So
Something's wrong with it when somebody else tries to.
exactly. So I'm just going to say that, China is very happy to hear you, Steen, and to hear you, Scott, try to scuttle this deal.
Right.
Well, I can
Because
tell you
this
that I'm
will,
not,
if you scuttle this deal, you'll help China
Yeah,
get
absolutely.
richer.
He is
I
right.
can tell you that I'm not worried about China because they're gonna self-destruct and cannibalize themselves with their massive wealth inequality. I say let them keep going into debt.
Let all
them
the
keep
money
going
go to
into that.
China
So what
because
happens when they
it'll
build
all
a
be
middle
good
class?
in the end.
They're not gonna have
What
it. They're
happens?
gonna cannibalize
Then why
themselves.
are they building middle class communities if they don't expect the middle class? They have empty middle class.
This is the problem.
cities.
They do. They do have lots of empty cities.
They're expecting an influx of people to become middle class. They have the infrastructure already there. So
They're saying, hey, once you get more money, we got all these buildings for you.
yeah, we got all these buildings for you. Leave the rice paddies
But
and come to the
Ridgemont.
cities.
So
you
I
joking,
get that. I get that you guys
Seriously,
are bringing up.
No,
a
but they
lot
built
of,
those so they could artificially inflate their housing market.
I realize that both of you
right.
are bringing up a lot of individual things that you think you might not like about TPP in terms of what may be involved in it. But something that I think that the core issue we're still disagreeing on is that you guys just don't like free trade. That's still the fundamental
I like
issue
fair
here.
trade.
And well, that's like a bunch of crap. So
well, look,
here's
if the working
thing.
class was at the table, if
you
the
were to
only
look
people
at
doing the
here-
negotiations
Okay,
weren't...
but hold on, I'm talking now. If you look at what is happening in the world right now, over the last year, a significant number of automotive companies from BMW to Audi have decided to place new manufacturing operations in Mexico over the United States. And so a report was done by the Wall Street Journal where they went and asked these companies and they said, why are you putting it in Mexico instead of the United States? And
It's
all of
cheaper
them
and
came...
the working conditions
No.
are
They
came
worse.
back and
No,
they said,
hold on. I'm still talking. They went and talked to these executives, and what the executives said is that the cost difference is not very big on the very beginning basis because in the United States infrastructure things like that are so good. But they're building these factories in Mexico because Mexico has more than 40 different free trade agreements and the United States does not. Mexico has duty-free access to markets that contain 60% of the world's economic output, and the United States does not. When a car is made in Mexico and it's shipped to Germany, it doesn't get a 10% tariff put on it. So as a result, we're losing jobs to Mexico right now, good paying jobs that are going to Mexico because people like you are insisting that we cannot do free trade,
You sound
even though
like
we've
Bill
already
Clinton
made,
in
even though we have
1992.
already made the
Yeah.
sacrifices.
Yeah, and you're
that
right.
we're already trading with the poorest countries in the world. We've already done NAFTA,
This
the
is
World
the
Trade
same-
Organization. With China is already a first
And this
priority
isn't just
trading
about
country.
trade. I
We're
mean-
we're already trading with the poorest of the poorest, so we've lost those jobs already. Now all we have are these opportunities. The more countries we trade with, the more opportunities we have, the more high quality jobs we can have, and instead we're losing these kinds of jobs to Mexico.
I'm,
So,
I'm
Joey-
all about the global economy.
Joey,
This is the same argument people made. It's the same scare tactics that people have been using since the 1990s and well before that.
All
This
right,
isn't a
Joey,
scare
Joey,
tactic, this is
Joey.
an opportunity.
Joey.
I'm not trying to scare anyone. These are opportunities, Steen.
so are all you saying, you're saying all America has to offer is some dumb cheap labor?
Yeah, that's what
Huh?
you're
Well,
saying is
there-
if
You,
we
you
don't,
don't
if
hold on.
we
You don't want manufacturing jobs?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you're saying that's pretty much the only thing in the equation. I mean,
If we, what you're saying is if we don't get on board the train's going to leave the station without us. That's the same argument that's been made since the 90s.
ultimately it's a
No,
goal.
Nobody-
it just means that we're going to lose high quality
It
jobs.
means
This
we got to
is
give
the
up
difference.
sovereignty to corporations,
That's right.
partially with
This
these
is the
ISDS
difference.
agreements.
This is the difference. Free trade works for small countries that have limited resources and means. It probably works for Belgium, for Suriname, for Equatorial
Brazil
Guinea.
doesn't have any
Yeah,
ISDS agreements.
But for a country like
They're
America,
all right.
that's the largest economy in the world, people have to trade with America no matter what. They're not going to stop trading with America whether we sign an agreement or not.
These
You're telling me
companies
that
are deciding
Nissan's
not to,
gonna
though, and
sell
you're not
their
addressing that
vehicles
issue.
here?
And but all if we wanted to be serious too, if we wanted to be
Brian has the conch.
okay.
I had a question. I thought Joey brought up an interesting point where because Mexico can send cars out to other countries without this 10% tariff, for example, to Germany, that seemed very interesting because, I wouldn't mind more people in Appalachia or Georgia or wherever to have some, more manufacturing jobs. Not like I like cars burning fossil fuels. But be that as may, we do kind of have cars. And Steen,
What are you gonna do?
Steen, did you have anything to say about this? This sounds like a very interesting factoid that, we're losing car factories to Mexico because they have no tariff to Germany.
Again, I would say that you're always going to have some balance in the economy, but do we want those jobs? We know the wages and the working conditions and the labor rights in Mexico are clearly worse by every measure. But again, the incentive to work in manufacturing in America should be because we have people buying the vehicles here. People in Mexico are not going to buy Nissan cars at the click we do in America. They simply don't have the money.
But you know
No,
what?
they
But you know
don't
what?
have the
I
means.
kind of don't have a problem with it because if jobs are created in Mexico, it keeps
That's
more
right
of them
too.
coming
Yeah,
over here.
Let me
I'm
respond.
not-
We
I'm not-
shouldn't
me-
be intentionally
Hold on, I got the
disadvantaging
gun.
ourselves.
I wanted to
fine.
respond to that. Brian, why didn't you ask me? You just asked
That's the
Steen.
thing. I'm not.
Hold on, I wanted to answer this.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't even remember what we were talking about now.
What?
What did you ask? What did you just ask Steen?
What about I thought it was interesting the idea that cars. Are
Oh,
going
right. All right.
to
So
Germany.
why do we have
Mexico.
why do we have all these tariffs? Like, I mean, we're not arguing in support of these tariffs necessarily.
Yeah, I'm not arguing
Just
in
because
favor
we
of
don't support
tariff.
free trade doesn't mean that we think cars should be supported.
But that-
Like, I mean,
that-
it means
that
we
is-
should have
that's free
flexible,
trade.
rational.
That's the point.
That's free
what
trade.
Yeah, that
That's
does
what
count
free
as
trade
free.
is.
That does
Yeah.
count as
That's
free
free
trade.
trade.
We're
But I'm saying not
talking about
necessarily. I'm not
agreements.
saying we need to bind our. Like, we're basically saying that we don't need to bind ourselves to this. Like, you can look at the
This is-
situation rationally, and you can put a tariff, or you can decide that it'll be counterproductive and not put a tariff. But if you're just like, we always need a tariff, or we always don't need a like, that's
We need to
just like using a
stop.
dumb.
We need assurances from
object.
other
sorry.
countries.
And
So-
there
talked-
are issues like currency manipulation from China that are not being addressed by this agreement, and we won't deal with it. And that's the whole point. We're
That's total.
disadvantaging
That is a
ourselves.
complete distraction from the actual argument.
And what
This
are
is
these?
the thing. I am not. This is the difference between me and somebody like a Pat Buchanan or a Mike Huckabee.
And you didn't
for
even
example.
respond about ISDS yet.
People that are conservative isolationist on trade, their belief is that the U.S. is the only country that matters. We come first, so on and so forth. That's not what I'm arguing. Like Scott said, I don't think that this is a bad thing, or like Bridgman said, this is a bad thing that people in Mexico have jobs. Everybody deserves to have a decent quality of life and be able to earn a living. So I'm not saying put up a border fence, raise the tariff, and just create this little isolated bubble economy. That's not going to work in global society. What I'm saying is don't sign a stupid agreement just because you want to have, we signed a trade deal, because you know that your corporate people are pushing you to do it. When the Chamber of Commerce and the MPAA and the RIA and all these groups that people don't like are supporting this agreement, does that not raise concern when the pharmaceutical industry, when the oil and gas industry, when all these industries that have been known to be corrupt, that are known to have problems, are pushing this? It doesn't bother you?
I mean, that's raising my concern.
It's not my favorite team of allies. But
ISDS
nonetheless.
though. Why do those have to
Exactly.
be in the TPP, and why is that not strong enough objection
Well,
to?
Brian has the conch, so
Oh, so you just dodged that one. Woo!
no, I'm about to get to it.
Good.
Scott, earlier you talked very fast and you said something about tariffs. I didn't quite comprehend what you were saying. Could you maybe restate it?
What, your response? My response to your question?
Yeah.
He's basically got these, 10% just because supposedly we have these 10% tariffs. You send a car to Germany or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, our position doesn't necessarily require that. I mean, we're not arguing that we need a 10%. Like, how do you not get it? What do you mean? What do you not understand?
I just want you to speak in a complete sentence.
Really? Quit getting me so worked up. Really?
Really, like, state a complete sentence.
All right. Well, I mean, we're defending we're defending an argument that we're not making. I mean, when he's baked, the 10% tariffs into our argument. Like, we have to defend 10% tariffs to attack free trade or the TPP or what or at least this situation in Mexico with these car manufacturers.
Can we agree that free trade is good, but that we're disagreeing on how it should be done?
No, because free trade is just kind of a blanket. It's just a dumb default setting.
Because here's what I think's going on here.
We need to think about things. Like, you can't just look at just say, oh, no tariffs, so we're going to do everything. Like, think about what you're selling, with the impact it's going to have on both countries and the working class on both sides. Like, when you're just say free trade, you're not considering any of that. You're just basically taking the argument of a 5-year-old and saying, oh, we're just going to do this is it. You know, we're not going to think about the impacts of this in the real world.
And also, can you address the concerns of not just American businesses and consumers and people, but also, like I mentioned, about the farmers in Japan, these other people internationally, drug producers in India, things like that don't want this agreement. Can you address their concerns?
Actually, the countries that are expected to see their incomes grow the most are basically everybody else. I mean, the United States is going to get its benefits too, but it's actually places like Japan and South Korea and Indonesia that are expected to get a lot more money as a result. But I want to address something here that I'm sensing, which is that I think that you guys are opposed to free trade, not because here's a reason why I think it is, because you look at free trade and you see it as corporate interests, corporate profits, corporations doing things that you don't like, and you see this as a corporate deal. That all the corporate interests of the world are getting together and they're going to increase their profits.
Well, that's one of the problems.
And what you're not seeing is that what this does is it increases the size of the global economy. It increases incomes across all these countries it's going to affect. As a result, yes, profits will go up for companies that exist in those countries too. But all you're looking at is corporations, and you're saying you don't like them, and that's all you view this as. I think that's the problem here.
And hold that, Scott. Joey, I want to ask you a question, and I want to ask you about this South Korean trade deal that we made, because I've heard that since that went into effect, that our exports to South Korea have essentially remained flat, whereas we have been importing a lot more and buying a lot more South Korean goods, which means that our trade deficit with South Korea since this trade deal, this free trade, went into effect, has exploded. And how is that good for the U.S. economy?
Now, here's the thing that's important about that. This is only one country, one example, but in South Korea, because we're buying more stuff from South Korea now, it means that we're buying less from other countries. So I think one of the reasons that we should pursue free trade is because rather than buying all of our stuff from just Mexico and China, we ought to be diversifying and buying from everybody.
Okay, I don't even remember what I was going to say a while ago, so god damn it.
Well, manufactured goods aren't the primary source of our economy right now.
Oh, no, I remember what I was going to say. Joey, hold on.
Yeah.
Joey's sitting over here talking with all this certainty about what the TPP is going to do.
I think
Joey, this is a top secret deal. You don't
No,
fucking
it's
know.
on WikiLeaks, man.
Yeah, some drafts of it are, on
But even-
WikiLeaks, and I bet Joey hasn't read them.
Okay, so you want me to answer to that?
What are we exporting? What exactly are we exporting right now?
We
Ask
still
Joey.
actually we still do we still do export a lot of manufacturing, a lot of airplanes. We do indeed export cars to a lot of
airplanes
places,
cars, yeah.
and we
machines
also
are the number one
export
Machines, yeah.
And up in
Yeah.
Northwest Georgia, we make a lot of carpet and a lot of flooring materials.
But we also, as a country, what we're really exporting a lot more of is software, movies, ideas,
Exactly.
and that's becoming much more. And that's, to me, that's much more exciting. That makes a lot more money.
Right.
I mean, that I think that's the right direction to go in. Absolutely.
I totally agree.
But
So should you think you should phase out the American manufacturing industry totally?
No, I don't think that that's necessary or warranted. I just think that a bigger
Is
part
it
of our
inevitable,
economy
though?
will. No, I don't think it's inevitable. I mean, it may be inevitable because of automation, but there's still manufacturing jobs that I think will always be in the United States that'll make economic sense.
Somebody's gonna have to fix
I mean,
those automated machines.
we're manufacturing more today than we've ever manufactured before.
Luddites.
So I don't think that'll ever leave us. But I want to answer Scott's point that you brought up, because you made a very good point, Scott. If you would reiterate it just a little bit.
The one about it being secret, or what?
Oh yes. Yes.
Right, is there another
This
one?
is but here okay, this is if this was a global warming deal, or if this was some other deal that you supported, you'd be in support of it, and you wouldn't be bringing up the secrecy thing, because most of these things are negotiated in secret. The deal with Iran was negotiated in secret. The points weren't let out. The stuff with Cuba recently was
Man,
done
I don't
in
know
secret.
if that was a good deal or
The
not.
current stuff on global warming, where they're going to go to the conference in Paris for global warming,
I'm
that's
pretty
being
sure that's
negotiated
not
in
gonna be-
secret.
Well, I'm a
Great.
transparency
So why are you
advocate.
only why are you opposing this for secrecy? I don't think that you're opposing these other bills for secrecy.
I mean,
I do.
honestly,
I'm a
I would.
transparency advocate.
Why
I mean,
not?
Frankly,
Why shouldn't we have a live stream of the negotiations?
I don't know about
It's the
live
21st century.
stream,
Why
but
not?
I think information should be. I think information should be
I mean, they're supposed to represent us.
And I think any government that wants to negotiate needs to make things transparent to
All right,
at
well, I
least
think
their
Brian's
own
going to take
people.
the answer.
I will tell you the why not. Why you shouldn't make these negotiations public is because when you put politicians in front of a TV screen when they're supposedly negotiating something, it turns into a shit show. And this happened in 2010 when President Obama was up there with John McCain and all the Republicans, and they're trying to hammer out the details of the health care bill. It was a complete disaster, in my opinion. It was just pure political theater, and I don't think you're actually going to get anything substantive out of putting negotiations in a public environment. I think I just don't see the benefit there. I love transparency. I love the idea of it, but at the same time, I don't think negotiations can be done in a public way. I think negotiations just kind of have to be kind of like backdoor. You hammer something out, you come to a deal.
I agree.
So you think they have to be essentially anti-democratic?
But understand that when this is fully negotiated, this is still going to go up to a vote before Congress, and they have to vote up or down. It's just that it'll be a 50% absolute majority vote, rather than having to pass it with 2/3.
Well, if they fast track it, then they don't have to, right?
No, if they fast track it, it means that they don't have to vote 2/3. It's just an up or down.
Yeah, and
50%.
it should be 2/3. I think this is the type of a serious agreement that you need to have a full agreement on, not just a partial one. A lot of people on the left criticize the Senate rules and the filibuster and all that, but I've always think you should have a 2/3 majority for major pieces of legislation.
There are a lot of countries that are in this deal, and these countries want to know that if they're going to take the political flack and the risk that could come with supporting this deal, they need to know that the United States is going to support it, and it makes them it puts them on the edge when they see that some people here want us to do 2/3. That's too much. It's too unrealistic, and other countries don't want to move forward with that in the way.
But it's not. We need to look out for ourselves. We can't worry about people what the Prime Minister of India wants.
Joe, you sound so rational when you make some crazy batshit arguments.
That's like
God.
saying we should sell out our sovereignty so that we don't worry our allies.
Whoa.
Pretty much. That's what that. No.
That's what you just said.
That is what you're saying. Whoa, when you put it like that, all of a
You just said
sudden.
the Indians and Japanese are concerned, so we need to make sure.
And what about? Hold on. All
fast-track
right, we
this.
got 2 minutes. I want you to defend ISDS portion of this. I mean, why should that be in here?
I think when you're doing free trade, at some point you have to come up with how are you going to, whenever there's a disagreement, you have to figure out how are you going to carry out those disagreements, how are you going to settle them.
Well, look, these
I think
agreements have only existed for like 30 years, and they've been rapidly rising. They essentially exist to give corporations sovereignty over government.
No, it gives.
regulation. I mean, if you
it
break
just
it down,
means corporations already have the ability to sue a government. It just lays out for how exactly that should be done. So that's all that is. Does that make sense? I mean,
do you not see a problem that if you have a problem in your country, whether it be the United States or Haiti or India or wherever, if they see a problem in their country with a certain
if we don't
labor
agree to them, they
violations,
can't sue us
environmental
for it.
issues, whatever,
but
you don't believe that they should be able to pass their own domestic legislation to address a problem in their country? You don't believe in local control?
Yes, I think that they should be able to pass legislation in their country to. But here's the thing, though. But what are you getting at? Can you give me a specific?
GMO labeling, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's say that the major agricultural and food producers, as part of this agreement, say you cannot pass a law that mandates GMO labeling in your country. Mm-hmm. Do you not? Whether you support GMOs or not, I know you do. That's fine. But we're talking about the labeling only. Do you saying that, for example, New Zealand cannot pass that law? They should be sued for passing that law.
Here's the thing. I think every country needs to look closely at this and understand exactly what is in the deal, because everybody's going to see what's in it before they vote on passing it.
You mean,
right? Because right now we're just passing in the United States.
Corporations
We're just voting to put this on fast track so that we'll be able to vote on it. That's all we're doing in the United States. But in the U.S. and in every other country, before this is put into law, they will have the ability to look at it and to vote yes or no on whether or not they want this. Everyone's Congress and Parliament will be able to do that. So if this deal does include something on GMOs, that's something that those countries need to think about and address now.
And that's the other thing, too, that we need to think about and address is if you look at the democracy situation in many other countries, it's not like it is in the U.S. Vietnam, these other countries do not have the type of democratic structure that we have. So we're signing an agreement with, in many cases, countries that don't have the same citizens' voices that we do.
But in response to that, I think it's very important that we still figure out how to include Vietnam and these other countries in the global system, because the best way to catch them up and to introduce human rights into those countries is to catch them up on their economy and to bring them into the global economy.
TPP.